Please note the meeting is being audio recorded. My name is John Holman, Chair of the Commission. I'll be running tonight's meeting. We are your volunteer representatives appointed by our county councilperson or county executive and entrusted to monitor renovations, and additions to our Baltimore County historic resources. We review and approve nominations to the Baltimore County Preliminary Landmarks List and comment on National Register nominations. Additionally, we are charged with evaluating submissions to the Baltimore County Historic Tax Credit Program that encourages the appropriate maintenance and renovation of designated historic properties. Would the commissioners please introduce themselves by name and county council district or representation? We can go in the order listed on the PowerPoint screen. Lily's not with us, but Chris?
Chris Weston, District.
Wendy?
Wendy McIver, District 3.
Daniel?
Daniel Dean, District 5.
Phoebe's not here yet. Jamie?
Jamie Ferguson, executive appointment.
Scott?
Scott Holupka, Planning Board Representative.
And Ed won't be with us. Vince is not with us. Tom?
Tom Liebel, executive appointment.
And Chris Parks.
Chris Parks, executive appointment.
Good, thank you. Now we will stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And Phoebe is here now.
Hey, Phoebe, can you introduce yourself? Cool.
Hi, sorry I'm 5 minutes late.
It's great. We're glad you can make it. The Landmarks Preservation Commission operates under the authority, standards, and requirements of Title VII, Article 32 of the Baltimore County Code. We refer to the United States Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation as administered by the National Park Service. This is the accepted national standard for historic preservation projects. Our own Baltimore County Historic Preservation Design Guidelines directly reference and incorporate the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. We have important preservation issues to discuss and debate at each meeting. If you would like to make comments, please limit your comments to the specific application or proposal submission being reviewed. We ask for your assistance and understanding so that the discussions do not digress. As an additional comment, we can all agree that historic preservation is an important aspect of the quality of life and place that makes Baltimore County unique. As a commission, we seek to recommend significant buildings and places for landmark consideration to the County Council for their final vote. As commissioners, we serve on the commission due to our expertise, interest, and passion for historic buildings and places, and review submissions based solely on their merit. While we may disagree in discussion and voting, we continue to be a collegial body that respects each other personally and professionally.
Just some reminders for offering testimony. At the appropriate time, staff will announce those who have registered to speak prior to the meeting and will unmute you at the appropriate time.
Good.
Yeah, and then just a reminder for those who are members of the public are attending, the information in this presentation is just a summary of what proposals and applications that we're looking at today. The commissioners are all sent the entire application pack a week prior to the meeting in order to prepare for tonight.
Thank you, Caitlin. And then any changes to today's agenda?
No changes.
Okay, thank you. Minutes of the October 10th meeting. I assume everybody's had an opportunity to read those. Any corrections, additions, alterations, commissioners? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move we approve the minutes.
Thanks, Chris. A second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, both of you, Scott and Tom and Jamie. And a voice vote is all we need to do on this. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. And then we will head into the items for discussion. Item number 3, are you going to lead us through it, Jessica?
Oh, that's me.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin.
All right, so this evening we have a nomination to add a new structure to the preliminary landmarks list. This is the Perry Hall School in County Council District 5. The nomination was submitted by a representative of the property owner with the owner's knowledge and consent, and it also has the support of Councilman Marks. The nomination was submitted under the following criteria. For criterion 1, which is an association with a person, group, event, series of events of historic purpose, importance. This also includes national and local trends. Under the educational development and school planning and design. And then under criterion 2, which is architecture, as an example of an early 20th century industrial or institutional building with colonial revival details. And then staff found that the property was also eligible under criterion 3 as an example of work by a local prominent architecture firm of Smith and May. So the Perry Hall School is located at 9317 Bel Air Road. It was constructed in 1928. And the building is set on an angle on the northeast side of the commercial corridor of Bel Air Road, and it shares an entrance and parking lot with the adjacent fire station. The building sits on just over 3/4 of an acre. The entrance road is located on the east side, and it joins a parking lot to the rear of the building. Parking lot provides access to an open yard on the west side. It has a flat, grassy area with a modern black aluminum fence along its perimeter, and trees line the south, south, and west areas of the property. There is a rectangular gazebo located off of the west elevation. So by the mid-19th century, the lands associated with what is now known as Perry Hall had been greatly subdivided, and several other landowners in the area began to construct residential buildings along either side of Bel Air Road. The area was originally known as Germantown in the 1860s due to the significant number of German farmers who settled in that area. And between 1850 and the mid-1870s, the Germantown community's population grew considerably. Although the area was still very rural in its agricultural character, it was maintaining a rapid rate of development throughout the second half of the 19th century. The educational history of Germantown dates to 1846, when a schoolhouse was constructed at the southeast corner of Bel Air and Forge Road intersection in the northern part of the community. The first school building was a wood frame construction, and then that was replaced in 1877 by a one-room brick schoolhouse erected on the same site. It was remodeled in the late 19th or early 20th century. The second Perry Hall School soon became too small for the growing population of the Germantown community. The current building was constructed in 1928 to accommodate the educational needs of the children of the area. Architectural programming for schools in the first quarter of the 20th century culminated in 1921 with John Donovan's seminal called The School Architecture Principles and Practices, which became a standard reference for architects from the date of publication through the mid-20th century. The book prompted the shift away from classically inspired designs and replaced them with colonial revival and other period revival and eclectic styles, with some regional variations based on resources available in the population. buildings were smaller than the mass designs common to previous decades, generally designed for potential expansion and optimal lighting and ventilation. Floor plans commonly forms in L, T, H, and U shapes and incorporated courtyards and other outdoor areas to take advantage of open spaces. Schools constructed in the 1920s had tall ceilings and windows and had characteristic repetitive bays of windows. In the early 20th century, the Board of Education had a policy. The county's Board of Education had a policy for hiring one architect for school design, and that was Wilson Smith and Howard May of Smith and May Architects. Smith and May were architects for the Perry House School, and you can tell they were influenced by Donovan's book in their design with the simple T-shaped plan and T-shaped symmetrical plan and the organization of classrooms, a large central assembly area, and large rows of windows for natural lighting. The design is reflective of many institutional buildings constructed in the late 1920s and 1930s. Many of these buildings, including schools constructed in the late and early 1920s, were Tudor or Jacobean revival or other colonial revivals within their style. And the influences of a new style of European modernism and international style in the late 1920s, you see a shift to simpler forms. The grand ornamental elements of the revival styles were set aside in favor of streamlining and more functional building exterior while maintaining the interior that served the needs of students and teachers. Many schools constructed at the time had plain masonry walls, largely unadorned by carved stone or cast concrete decorative elements. Perry Hall School follows this pattern of architectural simplification of details. The architecture of the Perry Hall School does have some colonial elements with its form and symmetry. It has simple ornamentation, such as a decorative brick belt courses on the facade that follows the top of the windows to become a patterned brick archway over the entry. The Smith and May elevations show glazed coping along the parapeted roof and a colonial brick belt course. Original window styles appear to be large colonial style sashes with divided lights and large single 9/9 sashes originally flanked the front entry, and then groupings of 6 12/12 sashes were originally on the side elevations. Windows were replaced most likely in the 60s or 70s to the current style of the single fixed pane with a panel transom. The only original window that remains on the front entry is the front entry transom window. The Perry Hall School served the community as its third school from 1928 to 1983. Although classes shifted to the new Perry Hall Elementary School in 1956 due to the population growth after World War II, the building was used as an annex due to overcrowding in the 1970s. In 1983, the Board of Education sold the property to the Baltimore County government. And in 1987, the county sold the school building and the current acreage to the Father Raymond Ribbon Center. That organization then adapted the building's use for a center for intellectually disabled adults until the early 2020s. The Perry Hall School is in the process of transitioning to a new use under the current owners. So Wilson Smith went to Johns Hopkins University and Columbia University. In addition to studying in Europe, Smith joined the Baltimore firm of Parker, Thomas, and Rice. Parker, Thomas, and Rice designed the Savings Bank of Baltimore Belvedere Hotel, the Alex Brown and Sons building, and the B&O building. All of these structures still exist as suburban examples of the neoclassical and Beaux Art School of Design. Smith left the firm about 1912 to begin his own firm, which specialized in design of educational buildings. Howard May was born in Baltimore and received his early education in Baltimore public schools, and then studied architecture under French architect and instructor. May was first employed by Parker, Thomas, and Rice, and in 1913 he joined in partnership with Wilson Smith, forming Smith and May Architects. Smith and May were the official architects for Baltimore County and the University of Maryland, as well as consulting architects for the Maryland State Board of Education. They did some city work, design work as well, including the Forest Park Junior High School in 1924 and the Gwynns Falls Park School in 1925. One of their most prominent designs was not a school, though. It was a building formerly known as the Baltimore Trust Building, which is now the Bank of America building in Baltimore City, which was co-designed with the firm Taylor and Fisher in 1929. The firm also designed the McDonough School and several University of Maryland buildings. In addition, they also designed some alterations to the Union Trust Company building, Maryland Trust Company, and the Mercantile Trust building in Baltimore City. After 1921, the firm designed a number of schools and smaller schools. They designed probably around more than 30 smaller schools within the Baltimore area, including the 1926 and 1935 additions to the Sparks Agricultural High School, Colgate Elementary in Dundalk, Essex Elementary, Relay Elementary School, Edgemere Elementary School, and Arbutus Elementary School. And you can see some similarities between Edgemere and Arbutus with Perry Hall. So the Perry Hall School conveys sufficient integrity of location, setting, and design that expresses significance for architecture despite having replacement windows. The building has not been moved from its original location. Its original T-shaped plan, T-shaped footprint and massing are largely unaltered. The building's integrity of materials and workmanship is somewhat diminished due to the installation of the replacement windows and replacement front door. However, the form, the size of the window openings have remained the same. The exterior retains original materials and details such as the stretcher bond patterned masonry, parapeted roof, and soldier bond cornice, string course, rowlock belt course, and water table. So the architecture of Perry Hall is reflected of many institutional buildings constructed in the late 1920s and 1930s. Many of these buildings, including these schools, were constructed in the late early, mid 1920s, were Tudor, Jacobean, and colonial rival in style. The grand and high style ornamental elements of the early revival styles were set aside in favoring a more streamlining, more functional building exterior while maintaining the interior space that served the educational needs of the students and teachers. Many schools constructed at this time had plain masonry walls, largely unadorned by any stone or cast concrete decorative elements. The Perry Hall School follows this pattern of architectural simplification while maintaining some colonial and classical elements like its symmetrical plan and on its front with the brick archway. The only ornamental elements in the building or the facade are the use of the decorative brick belt course that follow the top of the windows and become the pattern arch. In addition, the recessed doors have wood surround with transom lights above the decorative paneling the walls with a recessed entry. The building's integrity, the setting around the building has been diminished in size since the time of construction due to the development along Bella Road. However, the size of the property has remained the same since in 1987 when Baltimore County sold the building for the use as the Gribbon Center. So after reviewing the submitted nomination and conducting additional research, staff has determined that the Perry Hall School and its setting meets the criteria for which the nomination was submitted. Again, it was for criterion 1, the educational development and school planning and design between 1915 and 1929. Criterion 2 as an example of an early 20th century institutional building with colonial rival details. And then for criterion 3, and this was something that I discovered during my research because the initial research that I had did not name the architect. And I was able to find the original building plans to find out that it was designed by Smith and May. So this makes it eligible under criterion 3 as an example of work by the firm Smith and May. And staff now asks the commission to review and discuss the nomination to determine if it meets the criteria 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you, Caitlin, for that very thorough presentation. And with that background, commissioners, discussion or questions?
I had something.
Sure.
I'm just happy that this has kind of come up since joining being appointed for District 5 for the LPC. I haven't seen anything for District 5 come up, whether it be a modification, a change, or anything. So on my end, I'm happy to see something that is up for preservation for this area, as we don't have that much movement in there compared to newer development. Also, it's a wonderful thing too, because one of the schools mentioned under Smith and May was Colgate Elementary, which is no longer there, and that was the elementary school I attended, so in Dundalk. So it's nice seeing the possibility of preservation of another Smith and May building, just to kind of preserve that as well. So I'm happy to see this here. So just putting that out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Scott.
So I'm curious, given the criteria, how many of the older schools in Baltimore County could have been landmarked using the same criteria?
Oh, there's probably a bunch of them. Some of the older elementary schools.
And then I guess my question is, do we need to, is it just sort of happenstance that, okay, these people came forward? Do we think we should save them all?
I mean, with this one, it just came forward. I know Councilman Marks was pushing for this. It was on his suggestion to the current owners to have it landmarked. Some of the older elementary schools happen to be in National Register districts, so they also have some recognition there. And I'm not saying that every school needs to be designated. It's obviously a choice of whoever nominates it. We will review it against the criteria. And this is just the one that we've had placed before us. It is no longer a school, and it is a private property now. So that makes it
given that it's owned by a nonprofit, will they receive any benefit if it becomes
no, it's not a nonprofit now. It's now owned by it's a private company. It's transitioning to a new, so it's no longer part of like the Archdiocese. So it recently sold, and it was changing the zoning to do a new use.
So would they be tax credit eligible then, if this passes, or it gets on the national on the perm,
Yeah, if it's an income producing property, it would be eligible for a commercial tax credit program.
I might add the commercial tax credit program has a higher bar to reach than the residential, considerably higher bar.
Yeah, it has
So,
to be substantial rehabilitation because it's
yeah,
based on the property's assessed value
yeah, it's
before and after rehab.
I, yeah. Any other discussion item or?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, a lot of the schools that are still owned by the Baltimore County school system, many of them may have had additions so that their footprint is different than what it was. So one thing that does kind of weigh in the favor in my mind is that this one, the footprint has not changed substantially, that there's that integrity.
And I'd like to ask one clarifying question. If this is indeed landmarks, then we would see it, any proposed renovations or alterations to it be coming through the LPC for design review?
Correct.
To add on to Scott and Phoebe's comments as well, Scott bringing up other schools, I will say from growing up in Dundalk and the Colgate Elementary School, and that was tore down and rebuilt in the past, I believe, 5 years, if that, there was a need in the community for the larger school. Whereas this one here, it seems it's perfectly fine. I know for Colgate, it was a very sad day for me, and I went to its I believe it was its 90th birthday celebration. Johnny O was there prior years ago. And then for this here, before they tore it down, they had a open house where people could go and take a look at the old structure, the building that was being torn down, still in use. But I will say, compared to other schools, if we were to look at other ones, Colgate did have a need, knowing teachers that currently work there. There was a need as the increase in students and, just something to consider. Whereas this one here, as it's no longer a school, there is no need for expansion on it. It kind of fits the criteria even better compared to something that has a need to be rebuilt.
Yeah, it seems to document the era when the schools were much smaller, which I think is a unique factor for this one. You don't have so many of the schools that can remain in continuous use as county schools had so many additions to them, and so that original integrity of when they were first built is kind of lost in terms of the scope and scale.
And Dean, I would point out, I live in Dundalk. I went to Dundalk Elementary, which was also torn down, and for the same reason. I have Dundalk High School. These places needed to be rebuilt, and so I do get concerned about, just because you've got someone's got some reminiscing feelings about this is the school I went or my parents went or whatever, but I feel that those can really hobble and add expenses to the county. So that's why I get reluctant.
Yeah, and so
agree.
Scott, to that point, of course, it has to meet other criteria, which was kind of what Caitlin was running through. So
yeah, I understand, but I suspect most of if Smith and May did a lot of the county schools, a lot of the schools that we were talking about were built in the 20s and 30s. They'll probably meet multiple criteria. I don't know if that's sufficient for me.
Gotcha. I take your point. Any other thoughts, commissioners?
I do think, once again, the fact that this is a relatively unaltered version of a school, that it has not seen substantial renovations, makes it probably a better example of a good example of a early 20th century school unaltered, which maybe elevates it over some of the other county schools that have been heavily modified over time.
Daniel, since this is in your district, would you like the honor of making a motion?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I'd love to proceed and approve the nomination under criteria 1, 2, and 3 for the preliminary landmarks list.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Phoebe. And remember, it will take 7 votes to carry. out of our 9. And before I just make sure there's no other discussion elements, everybody. Any more questions? Good. Then may we have a roll call vote, Jessica?
Yeah, could we have Wendy, please?
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tom,
Yeah, yes.
have Chris Parts, please?
Yes.
Chris Weston,
Yes.
Scott,
I'm going to abstain.
okay, have Phoebe, please?
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and John, please.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have 8 votes in support of the addition of the Perry Hall School to the preliminary landmarks list, with Mr. Hulupka abstaining.
Good. Thank you. So the motion carries. And now we move on to number 4, our old friend, the Costa property.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, we're back at 16223 Corbett Village Lane in Moncton, County Council District number 3. Again, this is a contributing resource within the Corbett County Historic District, and we are reviewing the ex post facto construction of a 2-story accessory structure, and this is part of Code Enforcement Correction Notice Order CB 2300746. So to refresh our memories, Historic Preservation staff was contacted in November of 2023 and was informed of the construction of a 2-story garage on the property without LPC review and without a building permit. Subsequently, a stop work order was issued by Code Enforcement on December 1st, 2023, with instructions to contact our office. As a note, the county allows property owners the opportunity to correct violations by going back and getting the necessary reviews and approvals for what they are in violation of. Citations and subsequently fines are issued after there has not been any communication or active work towards resolving the violation. The applicants came before the LPC at the March 14th, May 9th, and September 12th, 2024 meetings, and are seeking an ex post facto review of a partially constructed 2-story, 26 by 48-foot accessory structure with a height of 30 feet. This is a 4-car garage and gym or office space on the upper floors. Testimony was heard and submitted from several neighbors in the community and at all meetings, and there was a mix of support and opposition. The major concerns were the height, size, visibility, and compatibility to the historic district. The LPC denied the request at the 3 previous meetings, citing that the size and design of the structure did not meet our design guidelines. At the September 12th meeting, the commission also voted to form a technical committee to conduct a site visit, which occurred on September 24th, 2024. The technical committee submitted a report to the rest of the commission for the applicant's review. The technical committee recommended that the existing height of 30 feet and footprint be reduced to make the overall size and massing more in scale with the primary dwelling. In addition, they recommended keeping the design simple and adding fenestration on the most visible elevation. It was noted that the location of the structure as well as the proposed materials meet our design guidelines. The applicants have now returned with altered plans and a new design that addresses the concerns voiced at the September meeting and the technical committee's sub-report. The current proposal includes the following: reducing the existing 2-story structure with a size of 26 by 48 feet with a height of 30 feet to 1.5 stories measuring 26 by 30 feet with a height of 19 feet and 7 inches with a saltbox style roof. The first floor will have a 2-car garage. The second floor will be used for storage with a max interior headroom of 6 feet and 5 inches. An 18 by 26 foot shed roof carport will be placed on the north elevation. It will have a height of under 11 feet and be covered with a rubberized membrane roof. It will be supported by 3 evenly spaced columns on the north elevation. It will be open to the north and west elevations. The rear elevation will have no fenestration. The north elevation will have a single craftsman style single entry door that opens to the carport. The attic story will have a single window on each end. The south elevation, which is the most visible elevation, will have 3 evenly spaced bays on the first level, a single craftsman style door, and 2 windows. There will be 2 evenly spaced skylights on the rear roof slope. The roof will be covered with a standing seam metal, and exterior walls will have vertical hardy board siding. The west elevation will have a pair of double carriage style garage doors. Some things for the commission to consider. The property's size and location within the entire historic district and its overall visibility. That the property is just over 1 acre and is located in the northwest quadrant of the district along the northmost district boundary line. The primary dwelling is centrally located on the property with an open front yard that gently slopes down to prevent, the steep slopes in the northwest side of the rear yard prevent any alternative locations. The structure is situated well behind the primary dwelling along the side property line with setbacks varying from 1 foot 6 inches to 2.6. The applicants are aware that a variance is needed for the setbacks and height, and the property is visible only by its immediate neighbors. Again, staff appreciates the property owner's willingness to work with the commission and make changes. Staff feels that the reduction in footprint and height of the garage make the structure more in line with our design guidelines. The overall size and massing have been reduced. It will not be as overpowering on the site. The significantly lowered height on the carport helps to break up the massing and greatly reduces any visibility. Staff asks the commission to discuss the changes in height and size, as well as the overall design, and determine if it complies with our guidelines. So staff's recommendation to the LPC is to determine if the proposal is appropriately located, is appropriately designed, if the reduced height is more compatible with the primary dwelling, and if it has a minimal visual impact to the historic district, and then to approve, deny, or modify accordingly, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Chapter 6, New Construction, Addition, and Non-Contributing Structures, County Code Section 32-7-405.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. So this is a property we've seen before, and you may remember we had a technical committee go out and review it and came back with some recommendations that were forwarded to the owners and also to all of the commissioners. Are the owners with us tonight, or the architect, anybody?
Yes, but we'll begin with our public testimony. So we did receive a number of written testimonies in support and opposition of the agenda item. So first, in the order that we received the registration request, we have Mr. Andrew Clemens. Mr. Clemens, you are unmuted if you're ready to address the commission.
Good evening, everyone. And I must confess to some confusion as I testify tonight, but I'm asking that the LPC reject this latest plan for the garage at the Costa property. This is the 4th iteration of the plan for the garage, and in the first 3 versions, we saw a lot of changes like the roof line, dormers, no dormers, changes in exterior materials, etc. In short, almost everything has been changed except 2 things that the LPC stated that they did not meet the Baltimore County Historic Preservation Guidelines and were the reason for the 3 rejections. The footprint of the garage and the height of the building were too big. I'm confused because this latest plan still has exactly the same footprint and height. The carport sticks out 18 feet past the building, so it's still 48 feet. Same footprint, same height. I'm confused because this alone would seem to make rejection of this plan inevitable. For if the garage was too big and too tall at the last 2 votes, then it's still too big and too tall. The north end of the building has been modified to be a carport, but that doesn't affect the footprint. It's still there visually. You see it from the McFarland residence, you see it from the White residence, and you're going to see it from the bike hike trail. And the carport itself looks like an afterthought with its low flat roof that doesn't match anything in the village. In fact, it doesn't even match or complement the main part of the garage. The carport itself seems like another violation of the guidelines in that it does not respect the prevailing patterns of design in the village. There are no carports or flat roofs anywhere in Corbett. So again, I could go through all the visibility issues, but we've been there and they are still there. You still see it from Corbett Village Lane, and it's still way too high as compared to the house. So again, I urge the Landmarks Preservation Commission to reject this plan and stay true to the guidelines that they have adopted. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Then next one, Jessica.
Next, we have Miss Christina Altman. I see that you may be listed.
Bear the road. 50.
I'm not sure if that's us. So Mr. Jeremy Altman, I have you unmuted on behalf of Miss Christina Altman.
Yes, good evening. I'm Christina Altman and I live straight opposite to the Costas. 1 week from now will be the anniversary of the shocking Thanksgiving morning a year ago when I happened to glance uphill from our yard and saw the terrible huge structure which had illegally been raised overnight on top of the hill above our village. Since then, the Costas have been conducting a psychological battle of attrition against most of their fellow villagers as well as the LPC. During this year, they have submitted one proposal after another where only minor, mostly cosmetic changes have been done. The LPC has rejected these applications 3 times with instructions to lower the height. The LPC site visit subcommittee's report mentions that the building's excessive height, which is the current 19 feet 7 inches, is out of scale with the historic structures of the village in general. This condition is exacerbated by the location at the top of a hill. They recommended to reduce the scale of the building visible from neighboring properties, which may require deletion of the second floor altogether. It is therefore irrelevant if the 19 foot 7 inches height is a few inches lower than the main building. It is still too tall and dominates the whole skyline of the village. The overly tall first floor is the main cause to the height problem. Nate Costa has himself removed his main reason to request the 11 foot height. It was allegedly needed to fit in the family's exercise equipment. But as he has preferred to have the space for his cars and not for his family, this height is unnecessary. Information from websites state a common wall height for a 2-car garage is 8 feet. An overhead clearance of 8 foot gives the interior a nice feel that is not too cramped. If Nate Costa would choose to get more exercise, which he so much praises, and get out of his car to manually open the garage doors, it would eliminate the mechanical system required for automatic doors and would allow to lower the building's height by 3 feet to 16 feet 7 inches. I also want to point out, as I have demonstrated in the images I submitted to the committee, that the Costas proposal's architectural renderings are totally untrue and deceitful. Those present the proposed building as a fraction of the true size. The Costas should not be rewarded by recurrently and willfully ignoring even the quite specific instructions to lower the building, even to the point that the whole second floor might need to be removed. It would be very unfortunate if the LPC would vote against not only the Baltimore County Historic Guidelines, but also against their own specific recommendation and let the tall, bulky southern end of the building loom overbearing, incongruous, and unfitting to its Victorian surroundings. In LPC's own words, out of scale with the historic structures of the village in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And then next one up, Jessica.
Mr. John McFarland, I have Miss Barbara McFarland unmuted if either of you would like to address the commission.
Yes, this is John McFarland, and we live next to the Costas on the west side. The original design for this building has a large deck running most of the length of the west side. This deck is over 11 feet high, probably designed to give a good view of the NCR Trail Bridge and the surrounding area. The framing and joists for this deck are now in place, resulting in a first floor ceiling height of 10'3". In the latest design, the deck joists are shortened and used for the large overhang. The wish to maintain this framing in the current proposal and having knee walls on the second floor are keeping this building at an unacceptable height of 19'7". I think that the final design should not be a compromise between an illegal 26 by 48-foot two-story building and a building that meets the LPC criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McFarlane. Next up, Jessica.
Great, thank you. And next we have Mr. Andrew Crosby. Mr. Crosby, I have you unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, members of the commission. I submitted.
We've lost you now. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Mr. Crosby.
Mr. Crosby, I will mute you and allow you to sort out your technical issues, and then we'll return to you if you don't mind. All right, we'll come back to Mr. Crosby in a moment, and I will unmute Ms. McFarlane. Ms. McFarlane, I have you unmuted if you're ready to address the commission.
Thank you. This is the fourth LPC meeting convened to consider this issue. At each previous meeting, you reached the same conclusion. The footprint is too big and the structure is too tall. Following its September site visit, members of your technical committee recommended that the footprint be made smaller and that the scale of the building be reduced by perhaps eliminating the second floor. In the newest plans, the footprint is still the same size, but is now divided into a garage and a carport. And the building remains exactly the same height, despite the technical committee's suggestion that the building be only 1 story. This unfinished Tyvek wrapped building has now dominated Corbett's viewscape for a full year, and no meaningful resolution has been reached. It is my fear that the LPC is growing weary of this extended controversy and may be willing to settle for a compromise solution that would be detrimental to the village. I would like to remind you of the 3 core questions which have been discussed at each meeting. Would the commission approve the current plans for the structure if no construction had begun? Should the Costas be given dispensations because they flouted the county's established regulations, which are designed to protect neighborhoods and property values? And should the LPC set a precedent that rewards homeowners who defy county historic review, zoning, and permitting processes? Viewed from Corbett Village Lane, the proposed 26-foot wide, 19-foot 7-inch building is too tall and too wide for the hilltop site. In addition, its softbox roof does not fit in with the symmetrically gabled roofs of the main house and the neighboring houses. And the large awning portion of the roof on the west side adds unnecessary mass and further obstructs the view. The removal of the proposed dormers and the addition of windows on the south side are an improvement, but more needs to be done to address the impact of the building on the village. Eliminating the second story would be an important step. Replacing the salt box awning roof with a symmetrical gabled roof would also help. In addition, a 24-foot width might be more appropriate. Although you state in your technical report that zoning and setback issues are not in the LPC's purview, I believe your published guidelines require you to consider these issues in regard to their appropriateness from an historic preservation viewpoint. I fear that if you ignore these issues with the assumption that a zoning hearing will suffice, you will be giving your tacit approval for variances, and the zoning department will assume that you support the changes. I urge you to reject the newest plans and to insist the building be reduced in height and made less obtrusive by requiring a symmetrical gable roof without a projecting awning. I appreciate your willingness to serve on this commission and your strong commitment to historic preservation. Thank you for once again listening to community input. Hopefully this issue can be resolved soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McFarland. All right, I will return to Mr. Crosby if you've resolved your technical issues. Let's give it a shot, Mr. Crosby. You're unmuted. Hey, Mr. Crosby, maybe you can try adjusting the audio options. And perhaps you could put a message in the chat if you are ready. But moving forward, we'll come back to you at the end, Mr. Crosby. But let's hear from our last speaker, Mr. Jeremy Altman. You are unmuted.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy, and we live facing the south side of the Costa property as neighbors. The Costa proposal at today's meeting presents a structure that is identical in height and footprint to plans presented at previous meetings that has been unanimously rejected by the LPC as well as by the technical committee after their site visit. Today's proposal shows a new space allocation, a two-car garage and a carport. Both of these present new design problems that are simply out of place in a Maryland village. The two-car garage sports a salt box roof. This roof style is typical of colonial traditional New England homes and does not fit in a 19th century rural Victorian Baltimore County village. The purpose of the roof in this proposal seems to be to integrate the roof overhang in front of the garage. This further increases the apparent size of the structure. Please note that the size of the overhang is specifically omitted in all drawings. Carport is a term coined by the noted architect Frank Lloyd Wright in the 1930s. Carports are a feature of 20th century modern suburban homes, and were certainly not a feature of 19th century Victorian rural design. So to conclude, the LPC has rejected the identical height and footprint sizes on multiple attempts, and nothing has changed in that regard. The LPC has suggested that designs more in keeping with the rest of the village and 19th century styles. The current proposal does not fit in with the character of the rest of the village. The suggestions made by the LPC on prior occasions have been ignored, and unanimous rejection is again appropriate. I thank the committee for the opportunity to be heard and to express my views.
Thank you. Thank you. Should we try Andy one more time? He said he was struggling in the chat.
Sure. Mr. Crosby, I can unmute you. Let's see. I believe Mr. Crosby has left the meeting. Perhaps he's trying to exit and rejoin.
Okay.
So with that said,
He did submit written testimony
yes. Yes, and
earlier today.
yeah. So we can move to the property owners. Miss Gina and Nate Kosa. I have you unmuted. Gina, I have you unmuted.
Hi there. Nate was going to do our presentation. So if you could unmute him, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure thing. Let's see. All right, Nate, you are unmuted.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good evening, and thank you all again for your guidance through this process. I'd really like to kind of express our sincere appreciation to Ed, John, Chris, Caitlin, and Jessica for conducting the site visit and providing that thorough and detailed report afterwards. I found that report to be extremely valuable as it referenced each guideline and the associated feedback in a clear and structured manner. I was going to go through kind of each one of those guidelines and how we adjusted our drawings, but I feel that Jessica did that when she laid it out to the committee tonight. But there are a few things just for in response, I guess, that was just said. And one of the things was talking about the last guideline and recommendation was look at starting about reducing the height and the footprint of the house. So our current house is 32 feet tall. It's also 39 feet wide and 32 feet long. And that doesn't include all of the porches. So we have a front porch that extends out. I don't know the measurements, but it's probably at least 8 feet and runs the entire length of the front of the house. We have a side porch, and we also have a rear porch. It's not my understanding that a carport is considered in the same footprint, and was one of the conversation pieces that we had during that site visit as a possible solution. The other thing I just want to address is the roof. So my understanding of first is reducing the roof height is based on the structure that we all looked at that site visit, which was 30 feet tall. And on that last meeting that we had, some of the conversations and points that were said were, I'm not opposed to the 19-foot roof. And so the reason why we have that same roof height as the last time is because it allows for the pitch of that roof not to be extremely flat. I am very open to anything and any suggestions of how we can modify this to adhere to the guidelines for the height, but that is one of the reasons there. The second thing I want to point out is around the flat roof. Jessica said this earlier, but one of the guidelines is not for this structure to be overbearing. So I feel the best solution would be a flat roof, which is pretty much as minimal visible as you can get. And how it doesn't tie into our house. We have 3 flat roofs off the back of our house that have a minimum pitch to them. I think you can see it in the picture in that report. And then the last thing, and I just had to Google this, but the recommendation was a gable roof. And according to Google, a salt box roof, which I didn't know that was the name of it, is considered a gable roof. So I'm open. I'm very excited to hear any thoughts about what we can do to not have a 5th meeting. But thank you all for your support through this. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the committee's feedback on how our project meets or falls short of the established guidelines. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. We appreciate it. Jessica, I think Mr. Crosby was trying to get back on. Do you see him?
No, I still do not see Mr. Crosby in the attendees list.
Okay.
If I do notice that he's come back on, then we will give him the opportunity to speak, but he has submitted testimony to.
He just put something in the chat box saying he was on a telephone connection.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Hi, is this Mr. Crosby?
Oh, no, it isn't.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Yes. So the only call-in user we had, we just heard from.
Thanks, Jessica. We'll keep an eye on it and see if he shows up. We're trying, Mr. Crosby. Thank you for being patient. Commissioners, so we've had a lot of testimony. We have a lot of information. Anybody have discussion, questions? Nothing?
I'd like to ask about the carport. It looks very out of place with that building and with the primary building. Why do we have the carport?
Here, excuse me, Wendy, let me pull back up the Costas. Okay, Mr. Costa, if I have you unmuted.
Excellent. The question was, why do we have a carport? The same explanation of what the goal for the purpose of this is. So this is where I was going to be able to do the exercise space for me, which is outside, and it would be nice to just have it be covered, even though it would be open. And from a doesn't fit in, I'd love to hear more about why you feel it doesn't fit in, as opposed to it just doesn't fit in.
Well, just as an observer, it just doesn't, the configuration just doesn't fit with either the garage building or the primary house. It's just totally not anywhere near any of that architecture. And it looks just kind of added on. Doesn't look as though it were thought out.
My understanding was that the goal of this structure is to be simple. That was the number one thing that message was relayed to me. Simple means not looking like our current house, but by using hardy board on the sides, the same exact windows, the raised seam metal roof, a steeper pitch with an overhang similar to the front of our house. Those are all the reasons why I feel that this structure now and these designs does meet those requirements of the.
I wasn't talking about the garage. I was talking about the carport looks just added on. It doesn't look as though it were thought of as part of the construction.
Excuse my interruption. I do see Mr. Crosby back on the attendees list. Would you mind if we paused our discussion so Mr. Crosby can give his?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessica.
Great. Thanks so much. Mr. Costa, I'm going to mute you again for a moment. All right, Mr. Crosby, let's see. Can you? Caitlin, are you able to unmute Mr. Crosby? I'm trying to, and it's
Sure.
giving me a little difficulty.
It's not letting unmute. This is interesting. I'm clicking on it. It's not letting me unmute.
It's doing the same for me.
I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I'm at a loss of how to resolve this.
The only other option would be to see if we can make him a panelist and see if we can unmute him that way.
Okay, let's see. And try that. Nope, I'm not able to make him a panelist either.
That's weird. It's not letting me do
Well, let's we've given Mr. Crosby, we've tried hard, Mr. Crosby. I understand you're
Wait.
back on the phone, but
I think wait, I was able to promote him to panelist. Mr. Crosby.
Yeah, I'm back on the phone.
Okay,
I'm
there we
back
go.
on the phone. Hello?
All right. Yep,
You got me?
we can hear you. You've got 3
Uh,
minutes.
Oh, well, great. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for your help, so on. Good evening. I submitted written testimony this week outlining several ways in which the currently constructed building can feed into what I would consider an acceptable structure. I wanted to orally present these comments, but unfortunately with the 3-minute time constraint, they would sound like a legal disclaimer at the end of an advertisement. I trust that the commission members will give my written testimony a thorough review as it includes much dimensional information. As Mr. Holman noted earlier, our old friend, the Costa property. I believe next week marks the 1-year anniversary of the shell building completion of the unauthorized structure. The community has been left with this truly white elephant, pending resolution. The majority of time and contention associated could have been prevented had the Costas merely applied for a building permit. The county permit process has safeguards in place to prevent wanton construction in historic districts. Was construction without a permit an oversight or intentional? At this point, I'm not sure. Regardless, this process has now become a dispute of attrition. 5 iterations of the design plan have been prepared, none of which come close to what the commission has recommended since the first LPC meeting. How many more meetings and misspent time will be allowed? Obviously, Mr. Costa would like to utilize the existing materials and framing in a potential rebuild. He would like to keep his 3 or 4 vehicles under cover, as he is currently doing without approval. He would like a cathedral ceiling in his garage. He would like to have a 2nd story capable of habitation. I would like to be rich and handsome, but we can't always get what we want. I think that the commission and neighbors in opposition have clearly stated and even drawn what they would like changed, but either the Costas or their designers failed to grasp or care. Throw something different against the wall and maybe it will stick. I would ask that the commission reject revision 5 and allow the Costas one more bite of the apple. If their solution does not drastically alter what is currently proposed and provide a structure more in character with the district, the commission should advise the permit department that the illegal structure should be removed
30
in its
seconds
entirety.
remaining.
The LPC process has taken far too long due to the Costa's failure. Zoning and plan review offices will still need to review, hold hearings, and comment after LPC approval. Meanwhile, the elephant is allowed to remain in the village as is. I would like the commission to light a fire on this matter. A demolition order might expedite that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. So can continue with the discussion, commissioners. Wendy, you had asked about the carport.
Yes.
And so the question is not whether we like carports, but of course whether they somehow violate an LPC guideline or a historic guideline. That the technical committee, as a reminder to everyone, tried to mitigate some of those issues, and the
Well, I
carport
was
doesn't
supposed
take
to
up as
be
much.
on that committee, but was not notified. So I did not get a chance to have input.
Okay, so the idea is it takes up, as I remember the committee discussion, it takes up less visual space and much lower height. So we also have had, and you may remember, commissioners, and just a reminder, we have received letters in support of the proposal too over time as we look back at the history of it. So with those 2 thoughts in mind, any other conversation or discussions about it?
John, just a point of clarification. So is the reasoning that in reduce that with the carport, because it has a lower height than the main part of the garage building, that's reducing the height, so it's reducing the height on a portion of this but not the totality of the building?
Yeah, I need to lean on somebody who's an architect, Chris Weston, who was there on this a little bit. But
Yeah.
am I kind of remembering that right, Chris? We were bringing down the height of the building from 30 feet to approximately 20 feet. We were changing the roof line. We were changing how much airspace it fills really with the carport too. Am I on the right track there, Chris?
Yes, you are. And those are recommendations. They weren't, if you do this, it's going to pass. It's
right.
Yeah. But your recollection is correct. Yes.
Yeah, those were recommendations to bring to the commission to see if they agreed with them precisely. But I want to make sure I had the underlying thought process.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because it seems like, that's kind of the central issue here is this recommendation from the technical committee to work on reducing the height and the footprint. And what this design seems to do is it reduces the height on the carport portion. And I don't see that it's reducing the footprint. And it's just, so it kind of hinges on this question of, is reducing the height on the carport portion enough to, bring this into our guidelines so that it's the proper scale?
And John, or I guess Phoebe, I'm just wondering, am I reading this correctly? Is that we had a 48-foot length before, and it's basically the carport now is reduced that effectively to 30 feet. So
the
30
concrete,
feet plus the carport. I'm sorry.
the carport plus the structure is still 48 feet, I believe.
Right. But it's not what exists out there now is 48 feet fully enclosed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then I guess a follow-up question on that is, there's a wall at the backside of the carport. I'm just thinking if we're trying to reduce the mass and trying to reduce the feel of that, is that wall an important piece, or if that were open, would that help to reduce the feel of the volume of the structure, so that you have basically 3 columns and a line that forms the roof there, and you read the 30-foot mass of the building and don't read so much with the just seeing the roof and the columns there.
I'm not clear. Are you suggesting just take the carport off, in other words?
No, I think if you look at the east elevation, there's a wall on the east elevation that that forms the back wall of the carport. If you didn't have that wall there, it has a much smaller presence by virtue of really just having lines that support that roof and the line of the roof itself.
Got it.
Just to add the back part in discussion here, there's a fairly large elevation change. So the ground behind this garage is probably 4 feet taller, and then it's lined with shrubs that probably go 6 feet that are pretty much solid. So very possible to open that up. No, again, open to any thoughts, but it's not actually visible.
Other thoughts, commissioners?
I guess I also, what I see from the comments is that there, has been fenestration that's been added on the south side, the windows, the door, that I think, I believe addressed the comments that were previously made. That I think then what the character of the footprint, I think, is probably, with reducing that 18 feet, in my opinion, if it were reduced by the 18 feet and open, it would feel like it's, reduced the volume of that. And I guess the one thing that I think hasn't been touched on is the style of the roof. And I can see from the back of the existing building that there are, there are a number of different lower slope roofs that were added on to it. But I think the intent was that the character of that be a gable roof, kind of in similar keeping to the primary roof structure of the house. And I guess I'm not feeling that that has necessarily been addressed completely.
I agree. It's not addressed. It's the salt box has nothing to do with Maryland and Victorian Village.
I'll toss in there too. I mean, just as we had last meeting, would this have been approved? I believe it might have been Wendy that had brought it up. Would this have been approved as is if this came to us? And it still has too much of that footprint and height. I understand the homeowners are trying to maintain the structure that was put there as best as they can, but unfortunately, we're getting to the point where I think a lot of us are just, at least for me, but for me, it's kind of like, how much can you do? Can you eliminate that second floor? Can you, is this you got to start all over because of this wouldn't have been approved in the first place if this came to us by by virtue of mistake at this point. So once again, what Wendy, I believe it was, sorry, Wendy, if it wasn't you or if I attributed it to the wrong person, but would this have been approved if this came to us as the structure before it was built? And me personally, I still don't think it would have because of that height. And I think Chris was moving in the correct direction of, you got to eliminate more, to be where it would have been approved by us in the first place.
Okay, so would one of you all like to make a motion on it?
I also want to address the kind of the stated primary goal in the first place was so that the Costa family would have more space for family time and exercising. And I'm not sure that this is really even meeting their stated goal. I'm wondering, if you've considered an addition to your house, just, start over and
Yeah, those are places we can't go a little bit on terms of our, I understand.
Yeah, it's just more that like
but
the point of the stated reason was for more family space, and
Right.
and now this is, it's storage and parking.
Yeah. Yeah. So anybody care to make a motion? We can approve it or we can vote not to approve it. So the motion would be either I move to approve it or that I move to deny it.
And John, I guess I'm wondering if we're moving in one direction or the other, if we're moving to deny it, is the intent that we would provide guidance for one last review, or what's the intent?
Well, the guidance sounds like it would be tear it down and come back with fully new plans at some point. We keep chopping off 5 feet or 10 feet at a time. That's death by 1,000 cuts. I don't know.
Well, I heard specific criticisms as topping out anything over 15 feet is not going to be acceptable to the community. And also the community is opposed to the asymmetrical roof line. That is a gable, but it's asymmetrical. And it sounds like what everyone's looking for is symmetry in that gable end, which is the elevation A18 is what is most visible from the village.
So I appreciate the comments from the villagers, but of course we have our guidelines that may be separate and acceptable on a different prototype than what they're listing as the height. So the other thing is we, to your point though, Chris, we have come back with suggestions, and if from the technical committee, but if they don't have the support of the larger group, then we can go back to the Costas and say it's not acceptable. It doesn't meet what we think would be an appropriate guideline. There are two ways to approach it. We can vote the motion and see if it passes. Somebody make the motion to approve it and see if there are enough votes to do it. It would take 7 votes to carry it, and beyond that. But certainly the Costas have heard our conversation, and they're also hearing the comments from their neighbors. So at some point they have the same information we do.
And maybe let me ask one more question then, John, if I may. Wanted to see how commission members would feel if we were looking at just the 30 by 18 footprint, the enclosed structure there.
You mean eliminating the carport entirely?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So structure without carport. Commissioners?
John, this is
Yes?
Wendy. I just wanted to say that in this village, I know we have criteria, but remember the people that live there all agreed when they made the village, actually, and a lot of them still live there, to adhere to preserving the Victorian look of this village. Now, this does not help in that situation. So the neighbors' comments, I feel, are very important because they are living with it and they are abiding by the rules.
Yes, certainly we clearly understand that they got ahead of themselves on it, but some of the villagers also are okay with it, and it kind of falls from that category. Some of our friends are for it, some of our friends are against it, and we're for our friends. You know, it's kind of like that category where some are for, some are against, and what we need to concentrate on are the guidelines. And if we feel, as Chris Parts is bringing up, if we pull off the carport, if we feel that it then maintains the landmarks preservation guidelines within the village, then we're okay. If you don't feel that way, then we're not okay.
Well,
So
I'd suggest if you take the carport off, you revise the roof pitch, and you rejigger the maybe some of the fenestration and doors, that might comply with the guidelines. But you're looking at fundamentally a new garage. I mean, you're looking at the garage it should have brought in the first place.
Yes.
Our guidelines allow for a structure, an auxiliary structure, to be lower than the house. And so the house is about 32 feet high. So that part, the height at 19 feet would be within our guidelines.
but won't it still need to go through zoning? Of course, that's not our process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Has to go through zoning.
So maybe, John, I'll try to put something forward. I would vote that we reject the proposed design, recognizing that the enclosed footprint of the garage reduced the size to, I guess my sense would be an acceptable dimension, smaller than the house footprint. But I believe the roof construction in its current configuration is not aligned with, compatible with the original structure. So I think I guess so it would be rejecting the proposed design.
That's all the motion has to be. Thank you for the rest of it, but the motion on the floor would be to reject the the design as presented to us.
I second.
Dan, was that you seconding?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we're in an odd situation on this. 7 votes will carry it as a rejection. And then if we don't get 7 votes to carry it as a rejection, we're in kind of a no man's land. We haven't approved it or rejected it. We've just said,
Yeah, sorry, John, sorry to interrupt. If we do not have enough votes to approve the motion, then another motion needs to be put forward until the commission agrees to the conditions outlined in that motion.
So, Jessica, let me read that back to you. In other words, we need to keep making a motion until we can come up with something that approves an alternate structure?
That
Or-
is my, oh, no, just that there
Yeah.
is a vote
Okay.
that carries, that our quorum,
So,
we meet the
okay,
standards.
so
So we would need 7
So
folks.
Chris, with your permission, if you were willing to withdraw your motion and instead making a motion to approve, and then.
Oh,
if-
John,
no,
I'm
fine.
sorry. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I'm noting that because we're talking about how many individuals need to vote yes to approving the motion at 7. So if we don't have 7 yes votes, then we would need to create a motion that until we have enough votes that will allow for approval.
But we have a motion to reject,
Right.
and we had seconded, so we could just see if we have 7 votes to reject.
Yes.
Right,
yes,
right. I'm
we'll-
just getting
we'll
ahead
say-
of
we'll
where
say-
I believe John's comments were going. But yeah, let's call for
See where we are.
yeah. Okay. So let's begin with Wendy, please.
I vote to reject it, so yes to this motion.
Yes, a yes vote is to reject. Thank you
Yes.
for that clarification.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Dan, please.
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Chris Parts,
Yes.
Chris Weston,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and John, please.
No.
Okay. All right, so we do have 8 out of 9 commissions voting in support of the motion to reject the proposal, so it does carry. And I would just ask that we give the applicants more advice on what would be approved in the future, what we're looking to see in terms of the sizing, perhaps something more specific. If we don't like the 19 feet, give them a number, give them a style of roof that would be compatible so that they're, no one's wasting their time or energy on this gratuitously.
Well, as I had said before, and I'm not an architect, so it's not a official thing. I just do not think the carport should be there. Let me put it that way.
Okay, so Wendy says no carport.
Yeah,
Chris-
removing the carport would reduce the footprint.
Okay, and then overall size, a lower height, take off the second story, change the roof. What else?
I think the guidelines are making, suggesting that the roof would be compatible. And a symmetrical gable versus an asymmetrical gable, I think is more in keeping of something in the, in the character of the village and the character of the construction in the region.
Okay, so a symmetrical gable, is that one?
Yes.
Okay.
So Chris, taking that a little further, I agree the symmetrical gable would be appropriate. Do you think that a roof pitch consistent with the main house would be appropriate, in which case that might raise the elevation up some but it would make it more compatible with the design of the overall property.
Yes, I would agree with that, Tom.
So that would be an option as well. Good. Anything else? Okay, so we've come up with the suggestions, Mr. and Ms. Costa, and we'll have to revisit this again at our next meeting if you have new drawings available for us at that time. And to all the community members who have voiced opinions, both for and against, we are always grateful for that input. And we encourage you, of course, always to be involved in your communities. That's what we're all about here. But
John.
Yes, Scott. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you put that last slide back up? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the last couple of comments.
The last couple of comments that as I understood them, were remove the carport, which potentially is a problem, and then the roof, either make it a symmetrical roof or imitate, show elements of the roof that's existing on the house to make it more compatible.
Even if the peak of the roof goes above 19 feet.
Good question.
I don't think
That's
that
what I thought I
Tom was
heard.
suggesting it would need to go way higher, but you might need to have a little bit of give. Remember, the guidelines for us, for landmark preservation, is that the auxiliary building not exceed the height of the house, which is 32 feet. So there should be a little wiggle room in there.
But the pitch of the roof line from that, we want symmetrical from the center line.
I think
that would be my thought. Yes.
I think that's
I just want to
having, yes, Chris Weston.
Recommendations.
Having been in this building, I think it's possible to save the second floor joists and make them essentially collar ties for a roof that has its soffit beginning at the second floor. The overhang at the front is actually lower than the floor level, which I'm not totally understanding, but that would be the point to start that gable. And then, you know, maybe it wants to get to a pitch that's approaching the house, but I think a pitch approaching the house, if you're at like 812, all of a sudden it's a 20-some foot structure again because it's so deep.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand, though.
Yeah.
Thank you for all those suggestions, and our professional staff will have those available for you, Mr. and Mrs. Costa. I do have to say, because it came to us as a finished building, it makes the complexity so much harder, and the problem so much deeper. I know you're aware of that. But we'll look forward to speaking with you again and hoping we can resolve this. Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. I just want to ask one more question. Are the other components from the windows and the window sizes and adding them to the south side, as it seemed to be, all those are the recommendations, and hardy plank and the metal roof, are those other pieces? Because my takeaway really is going to be to remove the carport and then adjust the roof as that was just explained. But I don't know what else I would do in addition, because it's as simple as it could possibly be. And I don't agree with some of the neighbors feeling that I'm trying to that I don't care, or that I am not spending time, energy, and effort to make a difference of this structure to meet the guidelines, because I am. And I feel sometimes confused about, after I hear the committee's comments, that I then go and adjust, and then it comes back and there's just a general consensus. I think some people may not just like us, which is, I don't know what to say to that.
Yes, and I'm sorry we can't comment on that, or we're trying to help solve the problem in terms of the building and giving you the best advice we can. And just to kind of reiterate to the commissioners before we let you go, windows, doors, we're okay with that. We think they all meet the guidelines.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well then, again, thank you all for your thoughts on that, and we'll move on to the next one.
Great, thank you very much. All right. So next we have the Glendon United Methodist Church. Property is owned by the trustees of Glendon ME Church at 4713 Butler Road in Glendon. This is County Council District number 4. And pardon me, there is a mistake on the PowerPoint. This is a non-contributing resource within the Glendon County Historic District. So the applicants have proposed the removal of the existing flagstone walkways and to replace with cement. Some background on the property: the Glendon United Methodist Church and Parsonage were constructed in 1931 in the Gothic Revival style. The stone church has a sharply pitched slate gable roof, bell tower, and buttresses. Stone and stucco additions were constructed in 1958. The church was constructed outside the period of significance for the Glendon district, which extends from 1868 to 1918 and is considered a non-contributing resource. However, it still possesses architectural merit and will be reviewed, taking into consideration its age, architectural style, and overall impact to the historic district. The applicant requests to replace the existing 1,742 square foot flagstone front walkways and front steps with broom finished concrete. The work will be within the existing footprint of the walkways. The front flagstone stairs do meet an existing concrete sidewalk that runs along Butler Road. The application cites ongoing general maintenance issues and safety concerns for churchgoers who have tripped and fallen on the flagstone walkways. It was replaced previously in 2005 and requires yearly maintenance due to annual freeze and thawing of the ground. Our design guidelines states that non-contributing properties in a historic county district should follow the same guidelines warranted when making material changes to non-contributing buildings. Decisions that make practical and aesthetic sense that may be contrary to specific guidelines are welcome when they uphold the overall intent of the guidelines. So staff asked the commission to think about and/or ask the following questions before their discussion. Is the original walkway material, or was it installed at a later time? Has there been investigation into why the flagstone has been deteriorating, such as improper grading or improper installation, etc.? And then to address those underlying issues. Was there any consideration in using a stamped concrete or to help keep a similar aesthetic as the existing flagstone? And will the existing handrails on the steps be retained and reinstalled? Are there any ADA issues with the flagstone, which is why the concrete is being proposed? And how will the change in material impact the overall aesthetics of the church setting? Staff recommends that the LPC determine if the proposed replacement is appropriate for the district and if it meets our design guidelines, then to approve, modify, or deny accordingly. Citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Chapter 6, New Construction, Addition, and Non-Contributing Structures, County Code Section 32-7-405.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. Is anyone from the church or the neighborhood with us tonight?
Let me take a look. I do not see any project representative on tonight. If I am mistaken, please let us know in the chat and we'll unmute you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, commissioners, comments, questions?
I don't think I, as Caitlin mentions in the chat and everything, my main thing would be, could they get it stamped as a flagstone? If the material's not original, doesn't matter as much. Could it be a stamped flagstone? And then, due to the condition of this, is it being professionally put in so they don't have issues in the next 5 years from freezing and thawing of the next one? If they can meet that, I mean, that's, for me, kind of that easy approval of, yes, get it stamped, flagstone, have it put in professionally to replace the existing. Just my opinion.
Thank you. Others?
Did you get any clarification, Caitlin or Jessica, about the question of whether the flagstone was original?
No, just that it had been repaired many times before.
It's kind of an unknown question that we, we're having to then decide with incomplete information.
And I guess I'm also wondering if they had looked at pricing a stone edge with a concrete deck, so that you would, at least when you're looking at the walk from the street, that you're seeing stone edges. I don't know. Personally, I'm not a fan of a stamped flagstone, because it always looks artificial against the real stone there. And I'd rather see an edge or a piece of that as being a real stone, and enabling the rest of that to go to concrete.
I would agree with Chris on that. That would be my suggestion, would be to have the stone edge rather than the stamped concrete. That you're still getting a bit of the aesthetic of the stone, but having the smoother surface for better accessibility.
One of the issues that I see with a poured concrete solution, while it does have much better ADA capabilities, you're going to have a really bright white slab against that kind of tan building. It's really going to change the character of the building. It'll weather some, but it's going to, right now it's very soft and subtle. You got a stone building and a stone plaza in front of it. So maybe do the walkways in concrete, but try to redo just the plaza in stone. Or if you want to pour the whole thing, detach it from the building, leave a planting bed or something there for 5 feet. So you're not pouring that bright white concrete right up to the building.
Another possibility might be a concrete with pebbles in it that gives it a little bit more, texture.
Exposed aggregate, yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we are open to changing the sidewalk with some modifications. So the question would be whether we could approve it with a specific modification in mind, or we can just vote on it as it is, and if it doesn't carry, then we can send it back to them to reapply with these suggestions.
Or John, could it be approved with a small committee to help them review options?
Yeah, I got to say, I'm not a fan of just a broom concrete finish. I think that's really not elevated to the level that this should be. I think maybe doing the washed exposed aggregate's a good idea. Also, we could look at using integral color to the concrete to take it from a bright white to more of a tan buff color. There are a couple different things we can do, but just kind of the broom finish gray concrete is going to be pretty rough, I think.
So the motion, which we're waiting a second on, is the motion is approve with conditions to be presented to a small subcommittee that can then speak for the commission at large on approving the final product. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Phoebe. So that's the motion on the floor. And we're ready. If there's no other further discussion, we're ready for a roll call vote.
All right, could I have Wendy, please?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Chris Parts?
Yes.
Chris Weston?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Phoebe, please?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And John, please.
Yes.
Great,
And
thank
so could I have volunteers for that? I think this work could be done remotely, just with them resubmitting something that's forwarded to you from Jessica and Caitlin. So anybody, Chris Parts, thank you. Anybody else?
I can do
Chris
it too.
Weston.
I'd be happy to help on that.
So we got Phoebe, Chris Parts, Chris Weston. Did I catch
Or was that
everybody?
Tom, I think.
Oh, Tom. Okay.
I
So
trust all you guys.
Yeah, and we will report anything at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And send a report to you all as well.
Good, good. It's a real problem on these walkways for older folks with a cane or a walker. But okay, so then the next we have some that were reviewed for historic review applications. Do you want to walk us through those?
Yeah, we've had quite a few in the last month. So first we have the Marshall property at 125 Rosewood Avenue in Catonsville, and they received Part 2 approval for an in-kind asphalt roof replacement. Then we have the Finagle Miller property at 204 West Seminary Avenue in Lutherville, and they received Part 2 approval for exterior painting. We have the HZ LLC property at 16947 York Road in Moncton. This is final landmark number 314 Bachelor Store / the former Menser carryout and setting. This is emergency approval for in-kind repairs and replacements to the primary facade, including the storefront window, framing, siding, and interior drywall and installation. This was following a vehicular accident. Then we have the Bird property at 1501 Frankie Avenue in Lutherville. They received Part 2 emergency approval for an in-kind asphalt roof replacement. We have the Baird property at 200 Central Avenue in Glendon. They received Part 2 approval for front porch support post replacements, retaining wall installation, foundation repairs, including mortar repointing, crawl space support post installations, and basement access door and concrete step replacements. Then we have the Biagoli property at 503 Dunkirk Road in Towson. They received Part 2 approval for lead paint remediation to the house and garage. And lastly, we have the Smith property at 609 Overbrook Road in Towson. And they received Part 2 approval for slate roof repairs, interior hardwood floor refinishing, a water heater replacement, and front door painting. And as a reminder, there is no meeting in December, and our next meeting will be held January 16th of 2025.
Yeah, so our January meeting is a change. It's the third Thursday. I did this
Oh.
because the due date for materials will be the day after Christmas, and Jessica and I are both off. So we wanted to push that back. And next year it's the same way. The due date's on Christmas, so giving applicants and staff not having to rush everything together, because we don't have that December meeting. Sometimes January we get a bunch of meetings, and I know there might be a conflict for Scott because there's a planning board meeting that evening. We already checked that, but it was like pre-looking at those. We never really had an issue before, and this is like right around that time, the holiday. So trying to.
Well, good to plan ahead. We're all in favor of that. So I wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving and Christmas, and enjoy your time off and your family time. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
And move that we adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right on.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.